What's up, Texans fans? You're watching Texans Today. And before we get into today's video, I've got a little thing that I need your help on. We are losing the subs battle this month so far to Titans Today. And as a Houstonian, as a Texans fan, I cannot let that happen. They left us, and they think they're better than us. The Titans, their whole franchise, originally the Oilers, we got to show them who the real boss of H-Town is. Go down and hit that subscribe button right now for daily Texans news and rumors. Howdy, y'all. I am Jeremy Chuggs, your host of Texans Today. And today we're going to be breaking down ESPN's list of the top rosters in the NFL. They went 1 all the way to 32. So we're going to rank them here today, starting at 1. And we're going to kind of go break down list by list. They gave us the, strongest, weakest positions, X factor, and a player you need to know about. But first, let's look at the list. And no surprise here, Kansas City Chiefs at number 1. And when you have Patrick Mahomes, you could have me on your roster, and you'd still probably be number 1 with him. The Philadelphia Eagles at 2, no problem here with the Bills, Dolphins, Bengals, rounding out the top 5. Cowboys, not going to lie, I think it's a little high. Personally, they're, not even the most playoff win since 2000 in the state of Texas, but they come in at number 6 on this ESPN list. Chargers, 49ers, Browns, and Jets round out the top 10. And I was hoping, maybe Texans are on this next slide. That is not the case. It goes Ravens, Seahawks, Broncos, Steelers, Jags, 11 through 15. Then the Vikings, Lions, Giants, Saints, and Patriots. Hey, but maybe they're on this next graphic, and they're not on the next graphic, with 21 through 28 being the Raiders, Bears, Packers, Commanders, Panthers, Falcons, Bucks, and Titans. And please say it ain't so. Say the Texans are not the worst roster in the NFL. They are not, according to ESPN. They're number 29, right ahead of our AFC South foes, the Indianapolis Colts, the Rams, and the Cardinals, which come in dead last in ESPN's roster rankings. Hey, it's nothing new for this Texans squad and Houston Texans fans the past couple of years to be disrespected, but it is what it is. We're going to break down what ESPN had to say in just a minute. But before I do that, I want to know from you. This whole show is about hearing from the people. I'm a man of the people, and I want to know from you. Where would you rank this Texans roster heading into this year? It's going to be the pinned comment on today's video, which means you're going to get hit with the YouTube ad break here. If it comes, scroll on down and answer today's question. Where would you rank the Texans roster? So the first kind of part of this ESPN list that they put together, they put 4 units for each team. First one being the strongest unit, which is the cornerback for the Houston Texans. And I can't disagree with this one. This is what they had to say on the Texans cornerback room. Cornerback depth. I could have gone offensive tackle here, but it's hard not to love the look of this cornerback room. It starts with 2022 third overall pick, Derek Stingley Jr., who was a day 1 starter, but missed half of his rookie campaign with a hamstring injury. Fellow perimeter starter Steven Nelson is one of the league's most underrated corners, and versatile Desmond King continues to lock down the slot. Newcomer Shaquille Griffin would start on many teams, and he joins Tavir Thompson as solid competition and depth. And as he said, we're going to take a look at this Texans cornerback depth chart, and I completely agree. Derek Stingley, he definitely gets overshadowed by Sauce Gardner. Don't lie, it does hurt a little bit seeing how well Sauce played last year and knowing the Texans were right there and able to pick him. But still, Derek Stingley did not have a bad year last year, especially as a rookie cornerback in this league. I think he was pretty serviceable. He's going to come in as your CB1. Steven Nelson, a great under-the-radar signing for the Texans this offseason. Desmond King played pretty well last year for the Texans. And then you add Shaq Griffin, who he had a down year. He had some down years in Jacksonville. But if you go back to what he did in Seattle, if he can recreate any of that on this Texans squad, you have a really good cornerback room and some really good sneaky depth in this Texans cornerback room. But hey, it all starts, and it started in the article with Derek Stingley. He is the star the straw that stirs the drink for this Texans cornerback room. And as long as he's playing well, as long as he can lock down opposing teams' number one wide receiver, I think this Texans defensive back room, I think this Texans cornerback room has some good legs to stand on. 6 foot, 195 pounds coming out of LSU. I mean, he showed flashes last year, and what really gives me a lot of promise is the Texans' new head coach, DeMeco Ryans. He's a defensive-minded head coach, bringing over Jimmy Ward as well. I mean, the veteran presence can only help this youngster and this whole defensive room in general. But I think the answer to this might be Derek Stingley. But like I said, I'm a man of the people. I want to hear from you. Who leads the Texans in interceptions this season? Is it going to be Derek Stingley, Jalen Petrie? Is it going to be Jimmy Ward, maybe Steven Nelson, Desmond King? I am leaning Stingley. I don't know what you have to say. So let me know in the comments right now. I'm going to be looking out to see who you think has the most interceptions for the Texans this year. Now on to the weakest unit. No surprise here. It's been a glaring hole for the Texans ever since the trade that shall not be named. It was an awful trade, and obviously the Texans wide receiver room has kind of plummeted since then. Brandon Cooks was kind of holding down the wagon for the Texans in general since DeAndre Hopkins left. But when you look at this room this year, Nico Collins, unproven. You go to the rest of the room, like Nathaniel Dell, a third-round pick. John Metchie, coming off a year where he didn't play, could be a very good year for him. And I just think, obviously this Texans depth chart, it's not anything to write home about. It's not the best depth chart in the world, but there is some underlying value here. Noah Brown contributed well for the Cowboys these past couple seasons. And one name that I really look at in this depth chart that not a lot of people are talking about, because obviously Tank Dell getting some notoriety here and there for good reason. We're going to talk about him a little later on in the show as well. But Xavier Hutchinson, all Big 12 receiver out of Iowa State. He is a sneaky good receiver. Not going to kill you with his speed, but has really good quick twitch ability. And I think, him kind of developing Tank Dell, John Metchie, Nico Collins, it's an exciting young core. I get why they rank the Texans wide receiver room as the worst unit on the Texans. But I really do think, they could go ahead and surprise some people this year with how well they play, especially if they get that connection with C.J. Stroud. I think, this could end up being an incredible story with, you see John Metchie, this Texans wide receiver room in general. I think they could really come out and surprise some people this season. As we get into the next part of the show, talk about John Metchie. He came in as the X factor for the Texans in this ESPN article. As we look to see what he did in college in 2021, 96 receptions, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns, averaging 11.9 yards per reception. He was a dynamite at the University of Alabama. And it's no surprise here. Obviously, it was a big downfall that he couldn't play last season due to his battle with leukemia. But apparently he's looked really good this offseason. And I'm excited to see what he can do on the field with all that promise he showed at Alabama. This is what ESPN had to say, though. Wide receiver John Metchie III, he's an unknown after missing all of 2022. But he recorded over 1,100 yards and 2.4 yards per route run in 2021 at Alabama, and is a second-round pick. So he has significant upside. As Mike mentioned, the Texans need help at receiver, and a young player like Metchie or Dell has to step up. And I completely agree. John Metchie, he was a second-round pick for a reason. The Texans picked him to be a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Nico Collins is coming into his third year. He's expected to make that next step, that next jump. Obviously has not had the best quarterback play behind him with Davis Mills and a cast of characters for the Houston Texans. But if Nico Collins can get a little bit better, if John Metchie can prove why he was a second-round pick, obviously, part of some illustrious wide receiver cores at Alabama. Can Metchie bring some of that magic over to the Houston Texans? I really hope so, because that would help CJ Stroud tremendously. But I want to know from you. I think this is yes. I think he will break out in somewhat this year. Obviously, I think it's a two-man race for comeback player of the year between him and Damar Hamlin. But what do you think? Will John Metchie break out this year? Why for yes and for no? Let me know down in the comments section. I really think he does. And for the Texans wide receiver room and for the Texans offense's sake, they need him to break out this year, because this wide receiver room has a lot of unknowns. Metchie, being a former second-round pick, his accolades, the kind of ability that he can bring to this room is going to be very, very important for this Texans offense. And the last one, the last part of this ESPN roster breakdown, the non-starter to know, another wide receiver, Nathaniel Dell. Even though it's the weakest unit, they went receiver, receiver, receiver. A little weird. Coop, you can just put me on screen. Oh, there we go. A little weird that they went three receivers, weakest unit, also the X Factor, also the non-starter. What are you doing, ESPN? But this is what they had to say on Nathaniel Dell. Wide receiver Nathaniel Dell, with the aforementioned weak receiver group ahead of him and the Texans likely to be behind frequently, Dell, a third-round rookie, could be thrust into the spotlight for a decent workload quickly. He led all FBS players in receiving yards, 2,727, over the last two seasons. And obviously, you're a Houstonian, you know Nathaniel Dell a little well from his time at U of H. He was electric on the field there, but my only question mark, you see right here, 5'8" and 3/8, 165 pounds. He is not a big receiver in the slightest, but my wonder is, can he play kind of that new slot role that has been created by wide receivers in the NFL to kind of get, easy yards here and there, get first downs whenever you need it, and kind of get mismatched against safeties, linebackers that can't keep up with his speed, that can't keep up with his agility, and get open for CJ Stroud. I am really excited about Nathaniel Dell, as is all of H-Town. I think he can really be a spark in this Texans offense. And like we've said, the biggest word for this Texans offense, and especially the Texans wide receiver room, is unknown. And that's what Nathaniel Dell is, because he is a small player. He was electrifying at the University of Houston, but they were in the American last year. I mean, Power 6 conference. They were in the American. They weren't playing the SEC conference. They weren't playing a Big 12 conference where he's going up against NFL-level talent week in and week out. I really wonder if his talent is going to translate into the NFL. And for this Texans offense's sake, I really hope it does. That's going to be it for me today. Thank you all for making it all the way to the end of the show. And hey, if you made it to the end of the show, we must be doing something right here at Texans Today. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. If you already subscribed, thank you so much. Go ahead and send this link to a couple of friends and let them know, hey, we got daily Texans news and rumors every single week. That's going to be all from me today. Thank you so much, and go Texans.